So we go on to our next speaker, Dr. Ashmin Gandhi. He is going to be talking on mapping and managing visual loss of neuro-ophthalmic origin, the essentials.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chitra. I would like to thank you and entire ARC panel for inviting me for this lovely program. So my talk is going to be on mapping the vision loss of neuro-ophthalmic origin. How do we pinpoint as to where the vision loss is arising from? So these are the areas that you're looking at. The vision loss of neuro-ophthalmic origin can be from the optic nerve or nerves in a bilateral problem, chiasmal area, a post-chiasmal visual tract, which will be optic tract, radiation, and cortex. Because of the involvement of the surrounding brain tissue, each one of these would come up with a different kind of signs and symptoms, and mapping would depend upon what kind of signs and symptoms that you are able to elicit clinically. So let's first look at the optic nerve. Now, the optic nerve, the acute loss of or a loss of vision of a neuro-ophthalmic origin because of optic nerve can be unilateral or bilateral. A unilateral optic nerve lesion would show always RAPD. So if you have a unilateral or asymmetrical optic nerve problem, you'll always find RAPD. You need to make sure that when you check for RAPD, you do it in the ideal test conditions, which is dark room, patient looking straight, and both pupils are equally illuminated. That means the angle of illumination and the time for which each pupil is illuminated should be equal, because RAPD is relative afferent pupillary defect, one pupil versus the other pupil. So if one visual pathway is not as strong as the other visual pathway, is where that visual pathway will demonstrate RAPD. So it's very important for, as a preferred practice pattern, to make sure that you check RAPD in the ideal test condition to elicit the subtlest of the RAPD. Color vision deficiency is one of the hallmark features of, again, most of the optic nerve problems. It is much more common or much more pronounced in somebody who has optic neuritis or nutritional optic neuropathies or LHON, but it is seen practically in all forms of optic neuropathies. Visual field examination, contrast and brightness sensitivity, and electrodiagnostics will form other facets which will help you to map the loss of vision to a unilateral optic nerve disease. Once you know that it's a unilateral optic nerve disease, the further mapping and management will depend upon the etiology. The commonest causes of an acute unilateral optic neuropathy would be optic neuritis or ischemic optic neuropathy. The neuritis, generally speaking, is a disease of a relatively younger population, though with NMO involved, this age group has become a little more widened. The ischemic optic neuropathy, by convention, is generally a disease of somebody who is above 40, but again, now more and more cases are being seen where ischemia occurs in a younger population. A subacute unilateral optic nerve disease will map it either to LHON or certain forms of toxic optic neuropathy like ethambutol can present with a subacute loss of vision. Gradual onset loss of vision with a progression of loss of vision. Generally, you are dealing with a compressive lesion or nutritional deficiencies like vitamin B deficiency, though I have to say that they are much more common in both the eyes. What about optic nerve bilateral? Here, you have to remember, if bilaterally symmetrical optic nerve disease will not show you RAPD, you may find that the pupils in a severe neuronal loss, you find that the pupils are not as briskly reacting as a normal pupil. You will find a color vision loss in most of the bilateral optic neuropathies. Fields become an important differentiator from a bilateral optic nerve disease and a post-chiasmal or chiasmal visual tract disease causing a bilateral vision loss. So visual fields become an extremely important factor here. Fundus examination again, because one of the common bilateral optic nerve disease producing gradual onset loss of vision would be raised intraocular pressure causing papilledema, which if not resolved would cause a gradual onset progressive loss of vision. Acute bilateral optic nerve disease can be optic neuropathies. Rarely the optic neuropathies that we discussed can be bilateral, but in most instances these onset would be sequential and not bilateral simultaneous. So that's about mapping the vision to the optic nerve, either unilateral or bilateral. What about after optic nerve? How do we map it? So if there is a disease of the chiasm, patient can still have a loss of vision. The fundus typically, if there is a compression at the optic chiasm, fundus you will see a bow tie optic atrophy. The visual fields will show bitemporal hemianopia or a junctional scotoma. Mainly what you are looking for in visual fields is a temporal hemianopia respecting a vertical midline. So any predominant temporal visual field defect, you should be suspicious of this. Other features like nystagmus, seesaw nystagmus, or post-fixation blindness should also be looked at. What about post-chiasmal visual pathway, parietal, temporal, and occipital cortex? In parietal lobe, you'll have what is described as pie in the floor, that is contralateral inferior quadrant myopia, which is homonymous, and you'll also find a deficiency of a pursuit disease to pursuit movement to the same side, causing OKL asymmetry. Most of the time, parietal lobe lesions will be ischemic or compressive in origin. In temporal lobe, you'll have what is described as pie in the sky, contralateral quadrant myopia, which is dense superiorly. You'll have other features like speech deficits. Again, you're probably looking at a tumor or ischemia in older patients. Occipital lobe, you'll find much more congruous visual field effect. Again, in occipital lobe, you are looking at ischemia as a predominant cause. Thank you very much for your patient hearing.
Actually, I was in the process of getting a radiologist, getting her a link, so got stuck. So I have a question for you, and Murli, you would have to take the next question before I could get my radiologist in. How reliable are the confrontation visual fields in identifying visual loss? And what would be the strategies in automated perimeter you would use for a neuro-ophthalmic thing? Like which one for what?
So confrontation is an extremely useful tool in certain neuro-ophthalmic conditions. In fact, you might have, that's the only test might be available for you, let's say in somebody who is bedridden or has a neurological deficit, attention deficit, where they cannot go through 10 minutes of formal visual field assessment. Somebody who does not have a vision which is less than 6/60, a formal field will not be reliable, and confrontation would be the only way by which you can map the visual field effect. Typically, if you have an optic nerve disease, you have seen the optic disc edema or a pale optic pallor, you know that you are going to have a visual field defect which will be on the center. And even 24-2 is now an accepted checking these patients. Any patient who has a visual field defect which is not entirely peripheral, I generally rely on 30-2. Somebody who keeps complaining of a visual field loss which is not picked up in 30-2 is where I go for a 60-field.
Okay. Sir, I have a question. Like, how do you typically diagnose Leber's hereditary optic neuropathy? I mean, is it based on clinical features? Like, because mitochondrial analysis is quite expensive.
Sorry, Murli, I couldn't get it.
Sir, how do you diagnose Leber's hereditary optic neuropathy? Is it based on clinical? Because mitochondrial is quite expensive.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to rely on, so any male patient, LHON will always be one of the differential diagnoses. Male patient with an acute or a subacute loss of vision, the LHON goes up in the list. Male patient with a sequential loss of vision, one eye within a couple of, within a week or 2 weeks, the other eye, it goes up really high in your differential diagnosis. All these features with a family history with a male having an optic neuropathy, you're practically looking at LHON. If the patient cannot afford the genomic mapping, and if he's in the right age group, nowadays a lot of these patients, I do start with Idibinon. The response is equivocal. There are patients who do improve. There are patients who they don't improve.
So regarding this treatment of optic neuritis, I mean, what would you do if you have made a clinical diagnosis of optic neuritis corroborated on MRI? And you have started the patient on pulse steroids. Like I had a patient who had a vision of 6/24 to start with in her right eye, and on the third day of pulse steroids, she went down to finger counting 1 meter, and then after 2 weeks, she recovered the vision back. So would that be a typical thing that you, in spite of starting pulse steroids, you have progression, or is that?
Absolutely. In fact, ONT told us very clearly that if there is a dramatic impressive response to IV methylprednisolone, you're probably dealing with something else, but not a typical optic neuritis. So it is quite possible that even despite starting your IV methylprednisolone, you may have some deterioration of vision depending upon at which phase of optic neuritis you've caught the patient. If Despite steroids, after 2 weeks, vision does not improve, is where you will start investigating, saying why the patient has not responded to steroids.